Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next episode of Bracket Talk. I am your host, Shelby Mast. Joining me, as always, is Graham Doran from gdbracketology.com, and you can find him on Twitter at Graham Doran. You can find me at bracketwag.com, USA Today Sports, and on Twitter at bracketwag. And tonight we've got a special guest, teen bracketology sensation Isaac Perigo, who I believe this is the first year you've done a complete bracket. Is that right, Isaac?
I did one last year, but it wasn't on the bracket matrix, and it was kind of just what I was thinking because I was trying to see if Vanderbilt would get it or not. So that's the reason I really started.
Okay, so he released his first full one on the internet. It did fairly well, but I think he understands the process. Graham tells me he does, and most of the times I trust Graham, except with his predictions.
Hey,
All right.
I just want to chime in here. I listened back to the pod from the other week. I predicted Syracuse would lose to UNC and still get in, so I was wrong later, but at that time, I saw something.
There are time limits on your predictions, okay? All right, so how did we do? I'll start with me because I didn't do as well as I had hoped, but I did better than expected, if that makes sense. I got 66 of 68 in the tournament, 62 of those seeded exact or within one seed line. Graham?
Yeah, I think I did okay this year, too. I also had 66 out of 68. Obviously, you want to do better, but the only team that I actually had in the field that wasn't within one seed line was Creighton, and I think you talked me into moving them down, so I'm blaming you for that.
I'll take it. I felt bad on that one.
Isaac? I had 66 also of the 68 teams right, and I had 60 within the two seed lines. So within one seed line of the bracket of what it finally was.
So that's not too shabby. If you can get something like that, you've got a pretty good understanding of how things work. Now we're going to move on to the selection show reveal. I'm going to let Graham go first on this one. I set it up for me, but there's a youngster on the phone here, so I need to watch my language. Graham, what did you think of the selection show? Don't hold
Isaac,
back.
earmuffs. No, I'm just kidding. But really, I felt like it was, it's like Christmas morning, and you open up your presents, and you get new socks, right? It's still nice, but it's not exactly what you wanted. That's what the selection show felt like. There was no reason to screw up what they'd been doing for years, and that had excited people for years. So I just can't figure out why they did this. I just feel like Bruce Rasmussen, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he's an intelligent guy, but I just didn't like the way that he got on camera all this year and just said, here's what I believe. And he did these long interviews about what he believes. And then he allows TBS to pull off this show. I'm just not all about what happened with the selection show this year. And just the way that the selection committee chair, I thought, gave away too much about what he personally thought as opposed to what the committee in general tends to view.
Okay, Isaac, what did you think about it? I don't know how long you've been watching, but let's hear your thoughts.
I didn't like it as much as the old way, but I didn't hate it as much as you guys. I really didn't like the auto bids part because you already knew everyone was in. And then how it was in alphabetical order, I didn't like. It created a lot of. I didn't realize Louisville was out until he said Louisville was out. And then the funny thing was when it got to the S's, it put Seton Hall in front of St. Bonaventure, so I thought St. Bonaventure was out. But they did ST Bonaventure instead of SA Bonaventure, so I was really shocked for a couple of seconds. And then about 10 seconds later, luckily it went so fast, it was about 10 seconds later, I realized St. Bonaventure was in, but I really didn't like how they did it as much.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that? I also had the same observation, and it wasn't just St. Bonaventure. I also thought St. Mary's and St. Bonaventure are both out. Of course, St. Mary's was out, but I was thinking, man, if these two teams are both out, who's left to put in the field? Who's going to be the surprise team that makes it?
I thought this show was horrible. I thought from the opening of it, when the audio was off, a good 5 seconds from the mouth movement. I mean, it was just it bugs me when TV shows do that, and any show. Local news does that sometimes. I know it's probably harder with live TV, but it was off and it threw me. and I had to put something on Twitter about it, and then I had several people respond saying, good, I thought it was just me. And I talked to some people today, and they really thought it was just them until they realized that everybody was seeing it wrong. Evidently, when they were doing the logos for teams, they used a couple, and I don't know which ones they were, but they used a couple of outdated logos that aren't used anymore by the schools. At some point, they did a switch away to the crew in New York, I believe, and the lights went out in the Atlanta studio. And then that awkward moment when Ernie Johnson was eating pizza with the guy in the live studio audience, that was just it was just really awkward and kind of just it wasn't good. They didn't. I don't like this. I hope they go back, and I've seen several articles written about it. And I like the tweet by the Lawrence, Kansas Police Department. Please don't call 911. We can't do anything about this. I thought that was good. It was it was horrible. I mean, they did a quicker job of revealing the bracket where they went 2 regions and then a commercial and then 2 regions. Where usually they go 1 region commercial, 1 region commercial, and so on. So that part I didn't mind. But the fact that it was different. I'm one of those guys that I don't like change necessarily, especially if something's not broken. There's no reason to try to fix it. And this thing wasn't broken, so I hope they go back to the regular, the right way to do it.
The other thing I want to mention about that, Shelby, when you're talking about the way that they went away and changed everything, I didn't like the way that they did 2 brackets at one time. I actually thought that was a little overwhelming. I usually like it when they do 1 bracket, you get short analysis by the guys in the studio for just, 1 or 2 minutes, then they go to commercial break. I actually really like that because that gives me 2 minutes to try to digest what I just saw, who else might be in another bracket. When they do 2 in a row, it's almost information overload for me.
Well, yeah, in that part, I like that. That's the part I did like. And it wasn't like I really liked it, but if I had to pick something, that was it. I do like having that little break so I can go see how I did, check all my results and everything. But this time with this format, I just waited till the end. I wasn't going to try to do it as the show went on. Just wait till the end. It was over and done with. Please, NCAA, please go back to the right way of doing things. For this, at least, this was bad. All right, Isaac, I'm going to let you go first on this. How do you think the committee did overall?
I don't think they were that bad. I think I wasn't really sure what to expect with the predictive metrics versus how they were going to judge each individual win. But there's a couple teams I was surprised Alabama got so high. Because I thought if they would have lost to Auburn, they wouldn't have made it. And I was pretty surprised Alabama made it so easily. And same with North Carolina State. So I was surprised St. Bonaventure got so low. I thought they were going to be a little bit higher, like a 9 or a 10.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. I thought they would be a little bit higher, but I was fairly confident that NC State and Alabama would be where they were. No real reason, just gut. I think for the most part, the committee did a good job. Everybody's going to focus on these 1 or 2 teams that they felt should be in over those that shouldn't be in, but you're talking 2 or 3 teams out of 68. And I think for the most part, teams were seated pretty good where they needed to be or where they deserved to be. All you hear on the news is what they did wrong. You don't ever hear what they did right. And I think overall they did a good job, as they normally do. You get 90 to 95% of it right. That's an A. Graham?
I really did think this committee did a pretty good job overall, so I don't have a lot of gripes. But there were a couple inconsistencies that really just bug me. First off, if USC isn't in the field because they don't have wins over tournament teams, well, they have great quadrant numbers, so why isn't Louisville in, right? Louisville they had sweeps over both Florida State and Virginia Tech, and they also had a win at Notre Dame. So I know this is part of me just probably being a little annoyed that I missed Louisville and they weren't even close to making the field, but if USC isn't in because it's the quadrant numbers, so why isn't Louisville in? I don't get it. Why is Syracuse in at that point? Because for Syracuse, there weren't great wins, right? They were no better than Louisville as far as beating tournament quality competition. And, speaking of other problems that I had with inconsistencies, how was Notre Dame actually in the field before Davidson beat Rhode Island? If it's all about the eye test and potential, as putting Notre Dame in the field would indicate, Why isn't Oklahoma State in? That's a team that could have done serious damage if they made the field and they weren't even in the first four out. First off, I don't have Oklahoma State in the first four out. They were not close for me. But if you're going to put a team like Notre Dame in the field, why isn't Oklahoma State? I'm more bothered by the inconsistency than anything that they actually did. So none of the decisions bug me that much, except for there was another team that was very similar to teams who benefited, and they didn't get that same benefit, which I really can't figure out.
All right, I'm going to throw
Creighton a team with – I'm sorry, just really quickly. How's Creighton a team with 2 wins against Quadrant 1, an 8 seed, and Louisville, a team with 3 wins against Quadrant 1, out of the field and not even the first 4 out? I really don't get that one, Shelby.
Rasmussen, that's his school. That's the conspiracy theorist in me, which I'm not. I don't subscribe to most conspiracy theories, but that's one for me, is because Rasmussen is the chairman. He got his team. However, you mentioned last week about the awkwardness in the room of having them out. Maybe they appeased him. I don't know. I can't imagine that really being the case, but it makes you wonder. But something else
I actually think it's legitimate, though, right? Like, what about Creighton's profile screams 8 seed to you?
No,
when you have teams like Alabama and Kansas State behind them. I don't get it.
I agree. And here's one more conspiracy theory that was brought to my attention more than once yesterday. 3 of the teams that were left out, Louisville, USC, Oklahoma State, all were mentioned in that FBI probe. Could that have something to do with it? Rasmussen said no, that never came up. But you got 3 teams that were mentioned in that probe who are on or near the cut line, and so now they have a legitimate reason for keeping them out, because they can say that we like this team better, when maybe they were going to penalize them going in because of the FBI thing. I don't know that. It makes you wonder, though. It's when there's things that are questionable like that, it really does make you wonder. So there we go. I think we're pretty happy with the bracket overall. All right, so let's start region by region. Graham, East region, upset picks, and your team to come out of that region.
Well, I think the East region to me is clearly the weakest of all 4 regions, and usually that's the West, but I really don't like this East region this year. As far as upset picks, I actually see it being fairly straightforward until we get to the Sweet 16, and then at the Sweet 16, I think West Virginia. I really like the way that Beetle Bolden and Daxter Miles can spread out those defenses, because West Virginia is not a great scoring team. They're really just not a great offensive team, but they have good 3-point shooters. Obviously, Javon Carter can shoot the 3 as well. I think they're going to give Nova some problems, because Nova's not used to having another team who plays somewhat similar defense to them. I know West Virginia is more of a full court press team, where Villanova, even when they're doing a full court press, it's not really the same. But I really like the way West Virginia plays. I think they're going to give Villanova a heck of a game and, in fact, pull off the upset. I also like Texas Tech upsetting Purdue and West Virginia making the Final Four.
All right, Isaac?
I think the biggest upset, I think Marshall could beat Wichita State. I wouldn't be too surprised because Marshall shoots a lot of threes, plays very fast. I think Marshall will beat Wichita State. And I got Villanova coming out. I just think they're the best team overall in the whole country. I would be surprised if Butler, Texas Tech knocks them off. I think Butler's going to play them in the Elite Eight, though. I got mostly chalk.
All right, I think my biggest upset pick for this region is the winner of tonight's playing game, St. Bonaventure or UCLA. I think it's going to be UCLA, and I think UCLA is going to beat Florida. They've got better guards, I think, and Aaron Gordon can take over a game. He's the type of player that can not necessarily win a title, but can win a game or 2 for them in the tournament. And that won't surprise me one bit if UCLA tops Florida. Other than that, I've pretty much got chalk. West Virginia over Wichita State. That's not huge. But I think I got Texas Tech coming out of this region. That may be a long shot, but I like the way that team has played this year. I like the fact that they've got upperclassmen, which a lot of these top teams don't have as many of. The youth, they can get scared by the moment or be in awe of it, and I think